Hey there, welcome back to Ask Amy. I have a question today from Jennifer. She says, you've discussed this in multiple podcasts, but I have so much curiosity around the difference between insights and thinking. My mind wants to categorize one as good and the other as bad, but I know that's just a thought. But there's also part of me that wants to value this thing we call insights. I feel like insights happen when we're going with the flow of life. I'm not attached to having more insights, but I do have desires to discern between thoughts and insights, as the message about thoughts seems to be no need to give so much attention to them. And maybe an insight doesn't need attention either. Maybe if I have what feels like an insight, I can simply know that it will unfold or not as life does. Nothing for me to do. But the mind does come in and think, that was a cool insight, now let's build on it. To give a specific example, I had an insight for a new business idea on a walk the other day. Then thought came in to build more ideas on how to bring it to fruition. Maybe none of it matters, but I'd like to hear how you think. So, I think you're onto it, Jennifer. I think you're really kind of sensing. I can kind of feel it even as you're asking the question that you're sort of getting some clarity there. So I'll just say it in this way and we'll see how it sounds. To me, when I read this, it kind of sounds like the only kind of thing gumming up the system a little bit, making this seem like, yeah, but what about this? And should I? And maybe it matters and maybe it doesn't, is this sense of a you that can kind of get this wrong. Maybe a sense of you that can help insights along, or could maybe mess them up, or that could pay too much attention to thinking, which would be bad in some way. So, of course, that's very normal. That's what it feels like. That's what it seems like. There is a me here that's doing some stuff and making it better for myself or making it harder on myself. And I guess I just would kind of have you take a little step back from that and see all of it from a little further back. Like, see the whole thing as just unfolding completely on its own. And so when an insight shows up, which I don't know you ask the difference between an insight and thinking. I don't know. I don't want to get into definitions about it, but to me, an insight is kind of an absence of things. It's what happens when there's not a bunch of thinking. It's like it's a sight from within is where the word comes from, right? So like something is just kind of known. And then almost always, or very often, like you described with your business insight, thought will come in and want to elaborate. And now that's totally fine. Like, you're not doing that. That's just how it goes. But it is kind of good to see that the insight appears, thought kind of clears, something is known, a new thing is known, a new sight is seen from within. It doesn't need anything. It certainly doesn't need anything from me, which is also just another thought about it. Like it doesn't need anything. It is going to continue to flower all by itself. So that's a good metaphor for this, right? It's like this flower just starts to open. It doesn't need our help. It doesn't need a pep talk. It doesn't need more thoughts about how it can flower differently. Like it's underway. And that's what we pick up on when we're like, ooh, something just opened or something just shifted. It's underway. It's already happening and always will. And this thing that you describe where thinking comes in and wants to talk about it and wants to think about it and what can I do? There's nothing wrong with that either. Now that might feel a little different to you than this initial kind of opening or flowering. And that's fine. That's just kind of good to notice. Like, you certainly don't need to come in and massage the insight, and you aren't. And thought doesn't need to either. But if thought wants to tag along and then kind of throw in some more ideas, there's nothing wrong with that. You know enough to kind of like just hold it all really loosely. So I think you're spot on when you say, I can simply know that it will unfold or not, and there's nothing for me to do. And I think that's really right. And there's no wrong, and there's no getting in the way of it, and there's no messing it up. That's just so hard to see when we've been so conditioned into this perspective of me, the one who makes or breaks things, the one who makes things happen. It's just very, very hard to see that perspective is also a thought that arises that we don't have to act on. So just hold it really loosely. Just play with this. And like what was really helpful for me for a while is this kind of perspective of just watching the whole thing happen, like watching it all unfold. Like, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder what thoughts will show up next. Something about that I wonder versus I need to manage it is a huge difference. You just feel it, and it reorients things in a slightly different way. Still, life is just unfolding, but to kind of have that few step back perspective where you're sort of just curiously watching it. And then that doesn't mean that things won't be done and elaborated on. They will. That's part of it. Actions are taken. Thought repeats the insight, tells your friends, comes up with more plans. That's all part of it. But just see if there can be a sense of watching that whole thing just flower and unfold on its own, rather than that little insertion that we have. And I think that'll kind of help. I don't know. I think it'll just give a really different perspective on things. So I hope that's helpful. Thanks for sending your question. You guys can send questions to askamy@thelittleschoolofbigchange.com. And I will see you next time.